Abba Father, thank you for this wonderful time to be together. What a joy it is to sing songs like we sang today, sing it in Hebrew. Father, it's a joy. So we just ask you to be with us today, continue to be with us as we open up your word. Father, you're going to eventually invite us to your dining table, to your banqueting table, and we don't want to be shocked by what you put before us. We want to be familiar with it. So help us today as we learn more about your instructions about a righteous menu. In the name of Yeshua we pray. Amen. Hallelujah. Okay. That's not food. When I showed this to Melanie, I said, do you like that little boy with the dirt in his mouth? She says, we hope it's dirt in his mouth. I go, oh, he is a little farmer boy. Anything goes. Oh, goodness sakes. So, yeah, let's get started with the study. All right, so this is something that we are aware of and where many of us are living by as best that we can. Yet, it's been a long time since we've taught about this subject officially and opened it up and looked at it. We've talked about it in various things here and there. I bet it's been at least 8 years since we've actually talked about it and taught about it. So I thought, well, let's see what we've learned since then, and we can try to apply today. So another name for this I would call defining food for my body. And I'm mentioning that because it was my intent from 3 weeks back to make this a two-part series. Next meeting, we'll be talking about defining food for my soul. And so what can we learn from this that will point us to spiritual understandings later on? Because it's Yahweh, as you well know, he uses physical things to teach us spiritual matters. And so we will learn those things. Today would be primarily probably more physical discussions, just practical. However, I think it'll get you thinking and talking on your way home or whatever about how that might apply to us moving forward. I'm looking forward to that as well. I know it stirred up a lot of things in my mind. We might ask ourselves, well, is it really important? And I've heard this. We've talked about this early on. Is it important? Because you don't really see a teaching about it in the New Testament per se. Yet, when we look back to the original sin, we would say it was about doubt. It was about not understanding the Father, about challenging his authority. It was about falsehoods. It was about a lot of things. But it was ultimately about eating something that he said was not food. And he called it forbidden fruit. So we're going to use that term today, forbidden fruit, and see how we can apply that to various forms of what this culture calls food. And we're going to be talking about 5 different arguments. I would like to take this time, and maybe you can take notes. This might be something you want to use with your family or with your friends, because there's various things in the New Testament, various arguments in there, not arguments, but passages in there that the church has used, that I've used in the past, to say, well, see, we can eat whatever we want now. Things have changed. So we're going to look at 5 different passages that are often used. One is in Acts 10, has to do with Peter's vision, which we're familiar with. 1 Timothy 4, where it talks about all creatures are for our consumption. Romans 14, where it talks about vegetables, eating vegetables. 1 Corinthians 8 is about food and idols, and 1 Corinthians 10, all things are lawful to me. We're going to examine those things about halfway through. We're going to shift gears and look at those passages and hopefully give you some ammunition to share with others. But to begin with, we would ask, other than the Garden of Eden, which, once again, the sin was severe enough that it changed their outlook about Yahweh. They changed their outlook about themselves, and it drove them out of the garden. And I would dare say the entire animal kingdom suffered as a result of it, because I believe they were all cast out as well at that time. So the next time that comes up would be Noah's flood, and the question comes up, hey, what about, why did the food laws change after Noah's flood? Why did the animals become a source of food? And there's a lot of arguments for that. I'm just going to share with you some that I ran across I thought were worth mentioning. One was Possibly man was weaker after the flood, as reflected in his shorter lifespan. So therefore, maybe he needed more food to sustain him. The world's vegetables and stuff, the flora, were also of inferior quality to that which existed before the flood. Well, we don't know that to be true, but it's possible that that was the case. So maybe everything that grew up after the flood, because it was a different atmosphere at that time, perhaps what grew before that was no longer going to be able to grow. And there's a big difference between good quality salad and iceberg salad, as my wife would tell me. The world would now have seasons with long, unproductive winters. Once again, everything changed. That's possibly when the earth tilted as well to create the seasons. So now there's going to be periods where there's not going to be any vegetables to harvest. They didn't have greenhouses. So maybe that's why he made the animals available. Man was also destined to spread out further. So not just stay in Israel any longer, but to spread out across the globe. And we're going to go into places like Alaska or comparatively Michigan, where it's just really, really cold. And we're going to need to eat the deer or something. And then the last argument that I thought was worth mentioning, man's shorter lifespan may have also indicated that his life would be more hectic and would require more nourishment. Now, I can buy into that. If I had 900 years, just think of all I could accomplish. But maybe, think if you wanted to build a walnut table, you just plant your tree now, and in 150 years you harvest it. And well, I didn't really like walnut. I should have done cherry. Okay, I planted cherry tree. 150 years, I'll harvest that. Thing is, we think that possibly life was at a slower pace. We don't know that, but it's worth mentioning. Certainly, you had your family in a shorter period of time. How old was Noah when he had his children? Fair enough. That's a possibility. But things definitely changed after this period of time, and it seems like things had to move a little faster. So these are just arguments. I'm not hanging my hat on any of those, but the reality is things changed after the flood to today. Today is a different era, and we definitely are living in a different atmosphere. This is from our statement of faith, and it states, we believe that the law of Yahweh, as presented in the first 5 books of the Bible, represent his loving instructions to his people for holy living. That's what we're talking about today. Holy living. Not holy dying. Holy living. Following these instructions is pleasing to Yahweh and blesses both those who walk in it and those around them. His commandments and statutes are not burdensome, but are in fact the way of life. So that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look in the first 5 books of Moses for his instructions on how we should eat. And I dare say, if I drive a diesel truck, and I don't have a very good memory anymore, like Gladys was sharing about, so I make it a point every time I go to get gas. Now make sure that is the right one. It goes in there. Don't get that unleaded and put it in my diesel, because it won't work. Matter of fact, if I had a warranty, which my car is not new enough to have a warranty any longer, I dare say if I put unleaded gas in my diesel truck, or vice versa, put diesel in my wife's car, it would void the warranty. Well, wouldn't that simply apply to our lives as well? We sometimes think that we can just put anything we want in our bodies that the Father didn't prescribe. He's the builder. I could call Ford and say, Ford, you built my vehicle, what should I put in it? Well, you need to put this quality of low sulfur diesel fuel in your truck. Okay, well, Yahweh, you built my body, what should I put in it? Anything you want. No, he says you should put this and this and this in it. Well, what if I want to put that in? Yep. Void the warranty, buddy. You're on your own now. It makes sense to me. Okay, so we're going to look at Leviticus 11. We're also going to look at Deuteronomy 14 just a bit, because most of it's redundant. But most of these food instructions are repeated in Deuteronomy. So let's read, and then we'll pause and we'll study that part of it. Please. Now Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying to them, speak to the children of Israel, saying, these are the animals which you may eat among all the animals that are on the earth. among the animals, whoever divides the hoof, having cloven hooves, and chewing the cud, that you may eat. Nevertheless, these you shall not eat among those that chew the cud, or those who have cloven hooves. The camel, because it chews the cud but does not have cloven hooves, is unclean to you. The rock hyrax, because it chews the cud but does not have cloven hooves, it is unclean to you. The hare, because it chews the hare is a rabbit, because it chews the cud but does not have cloven hoofs, it is also unclean to you. And the swine, the pig, though it divides the hoof, having cloven hooves, yet does not chew the cud, is unclean to you. Their flesh you shall not eat, their carcasses you shall not touch. They are unclean to you. So our first food type that we're going to examine is going to be the pig. What about ham? So let's explore this a little bit. I remember when we were raising the children, Melanie was pregnant with Marissa. And she was upstairs in the family room, so I was doing the cooking and for the children, the boys. And one of my fallbacks, besides pancakes, which every man's fallback is pancakes, was these sliced pieces of ham we'd get, and we'd cut it up and it'd feed all three of us. And Melanie, she didn't get any of that. Good for her, because she couldn't keep anything down at the time. But that was just a fallback. And oh my goodness, now with what I know, it's like, oh, what was I doing? But anyway, this is in 2012. Sources of the world's meat supply in 2012, and this would not include fish. So this would just be basically your land animals. Pig is number one. Unbelievable. Next to that is going to be, what is this? Poultry. Wow, pig's above poultry. I didn't realize that. So this includes the birds. And then cattle and buffalo is, wow, not quite half of that, but considerably less. And then sheep and goats over here, and other. Yuck, what is other? Tofu. So pig I am very familiar with. Maybe I've shared this picture with you before or not, but this is me, about this age right here. And we lived on a pig farm. And one day I went out to see the little pigs because my brother Doug told me there was little pigs born, and I wanted to see the little piglets. I have no idea why I wanted to see little piglets, but I took off out there and I took the shortcut. It didn't pan out so well. But at least I took a stick with me, and I went out there I had a stick in my left hand, and I went out there and I got up to here and I got stuck, and I couldn't go anywhere. And the sows came out there to greet me, and I beat them off because I knew about these pigs. Just beat this stick. And my mom, I don't know if I called for her or what, but it looks like I finally fell down. And she came out and got me, and she had the thoughtfulness to take a snapshot before she gave me a good licking. But and I'm glad she did. My goodness, I needed that. Does anybody know what SPAM stands for? Not real meat. It stands for spiced ham. That's how they came up with the name, spiced ham. And I love this because it says it's chopped pork and ham. Oh, wait a minute. Ham is pork. Chopped pork and ham. Go figure. Not very safe. Spam was introduced during World War II because they had trouble getting meat products to our soldiers. So Hormel developed it, and it became popular during World War II. Now the soldiers that were in World War, they weren't so much of a fan of it by the time they got home, but they started selling them on the shelves, and it became something that was introduced, and it became something that's passed down from generation to generation, even their own recipes. So people began to eat it. But it is purely just chopped up pork. They actually take the pork and they slurry it up, and they put it in the container, and then they cook the container. So it's cooked in the can. Can I have the pig without the spam, basically? And ooh, that sounds terrible. Well, anyways, that's where they came up with the term spam mail, as something that was offered repeatedly that you really didn't ask for. And so the term actually came from that skit. But that brings up something, and that brings up Dr. Kellogg, which for those of you who are familiar with Battle Creek or live in Battle Creek, yes, you're very familiar with Dr. Kellogg. He came here and he saw how he's a doctor, and he saw how unhealthy the American diet is, and he saw for the frontiers people, they did everything with pork. They ate pork for breakfast primarily. There was not a breakfast that was eaten without pork. There was no alternatives besides eggs. So he came up with, that was his reason for coming up with Kellogg cornflakes. He was looking for an alternative to offer to the American people, and which ended up being to the world. I think he was actually Seventh-day Adventist, if I'm not sure if that's not the case. But this is Dr. Kellogg, and this is what he had to say. And do we have a reader now with the, okay.
In the case of no other animal is so large a portion of the dead carcass utilized as food, it seems to be considered that pork is such a delicacy that not a particle should be wasted. The fat and lean portions are eaten fresh or carefully preserved by salting or smoking or both. The tail is roasted, the snout, ears, and feet are pickled and eaten as souse. The intestine and lungs are eaten as tripe or made into sausages. Black pudding is made of the blood. The liver, spleen, and kidneys are also prized. The pancreas and other glands are considered great delicacies, while even the skin is made into jelly. In fact, nothing is left of the beast, not even the bristles, which the shoemaker claims. You know, they should add to that the bones, because they make gelatin of the bones.
Yep. And then let's finish with his question he then asked himself.
What shall we do with the hog? Stop raising him, turn him loose. We will soon find his place. He will soon find his place like the 5,000 which ran down into the sea in the days of Messiah. If he must be raised, use him for eliminating our halls and houses, lubricate our car and wagon with his abundant fat. Do anything with him but eat him. If it would be dangerous to adopt the principle that we must devour everything which is in the way or which cannot be otherwise utilized. Adam Clark thought of one appropriate use to make the hog. He said if he was going to make an offering to the devil, he would employ a hog stuffed with tobacco.
And I think Adam Clark, he was part of the Nazarene movement, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, if you want, he has an 11-page paper that he wrote. It's fairly old. It's difficult to read. But if you want to read that, I can get that to you. Just let me know. All right, so the argument for the hog, and this is what we're going to say. Is a hog for eating, or is it forbidden fruit? Let's all say it together. Forbidden fruit. Let's say it louder. Forbidden fruit. Hallelujah. You're going to get a chance to do that again. All right, so the next argument, reading on in Leviticus 11, starting with verse 9.
These you may eat of all that are in the water. Whatever in the water has fins and scales, whether in the seas or in the rivers, that you may eat. But all in the seas or in the rivers that do not have fins and scales, all that move in the water, or any living thing which is in the water, they are an abomination to you. They shall be an abomination to you. You shall not eat their flesh, but you shall regard their carcasses as an abomination. Whatever in the water does not have fins and scales, that shall be an abomination to you.
And so they're giving us these general principles, and it's easy, like around here, you'd say, okay, so catfish, they're unclean because they don't have the scales, and sharks would be unclean because they don't have the scales. Whales would be unclean as far as that goes, if you're considering that a fish, although it's a mammal. So that's our general guidelines. So let's talk about what is considered the world creates and says this is a delicacy. This is a delicacy. This is when you have a Super Bowl celebration, when you have a wedding, this is what you got to have because it's expensive and it's something you can't just grow in the garden. It's something a delicacy. Well, let's take a look at the shrimp. Should we examine the shrimp a little bit? Here's a video I have for you about shrimp. It's just really short.
If you put out a trap in one of the ways that we sample our shrimp, and you pull it up and you see hundreds, literally hundreds in each trap, people's eyes light up and say, oh my goodness, like, that's a lot of shrimp. Yeah, and they're doing a lot of work. The kinds of places where the shrimp like to be are exactly the same places where the people like to be. The reason that they like the same places that our shrimp do is the shrimp are keeping it clean. And they're sweeping off the sediment from the bottom. They're turning a lot of that material into their own bodies, and that the shrimp are able to use a lot of things that would otherwise pile up and be kind of slimy and not very attractive to swimmers. And so all that sweeping and all that movement that they do is really keeping things great for recreation.
Did you guys see that? They're the cleaners. They clean the bottom of, in this case, it looks like a river. So I don't know if that's freshwater shrimp or what, but it would be the same case in the oceans. So shrimp, and he also said shrimp are what they eat, he said. They basically turn this stuff that they gather off the bottom and debris, and they turn it into their bodies, and then we consume it and turn it into our bodies. At least we used to. At least I used to. I don't do that any longer. So hallelujah. So in the argument regarding the shrimp, it is what?
Forbidden fruit.
Forbidden fruit. Hallelujah. Thank you. Okay. Another one that comes up a lot then is the crab. What about the crab argument? I love my brothers. My my oldest brother, he's still his favorite place. Him and his wife used to go out to eat. Well, they still do. And they celebrate, and they go to Red Lobster. Now, I don't know what they get there. They might get fish. They might get something clean. You can go there and get something clean, too, but I always like the hush puppies. And I don't even know what they're made out of, but we don't go there anymore anyway, so it doesn't matter. But we find other places to go. What about the crab? Here's another similar little video for you regarding the crab.
Just occasionally, there is a gigantic bonanza.
That's sea snow that's coming down at the bottom of the ocean, which is excrement.
The remains of a sperm whale. It died 5 months or so ago. There's little left but fatty blubber clinging to its bones. Its flesh has nourished life for miles around, but now the feast is almost over. Spider crabs, a meter across, still pick at the last putrid remains. A few weeks more, and nothing will be left but bare bones. The crabs will have to fast until the next carcass drifts down.
The crabs will have to fast until the next carcass drifts down. So they call that a whale fall. And it said it was 5 months old, and it was rotting at the bottom of the sea, and the crabs were having a heyday with it. It said they're eating the last of the remaining putrid remains. So they must not have any taste buds at all. I don't know. But crabs are, considered a delicacy as well. And I did see a video about, well, I think I might have it in here, but one of the things they were using to catch crabs was pig's feet, of all things. Pig's feet. You can catch a lot of crabs with pig's feet. Go figure. So, should we eat that which eats rotting flesh like that? What do we call it?
Forbidden fruit.
Forbidden fruit. Thank you. All right. Let that sink in for a minute. All right, then moving right along in Leviticus. I need another reader, 13 through 19.
And these you shall regard as an abomination among the birds. They shall not be eaten, they are an abomination. The eagle, the vulture, the buzzard, the kite, and the falcon after its kind. Every raven after its kind. The ostrich, the short-eared owl, the seagull, and the hawk after its kind. The little owl, the fisher owl, and the screech owl. The white owl, the jackdaw, and the carrion vulture. The stork, the heron after its kind, the hoopoe, and the bat.
All right, and they're doing their best to translate into the animals they think that they're referring to today. But this one, when we go to Deuteronomy 14, it had a little bit more information, so I thought I'd bring this in and cross-reference it. So if somebody could read this similar passage in Deuteronomy 14:11 through 20.
All clean birds you may eat, but these you shall not eat: the eagle, the vulture, the buzzard, the red kite, the falcon, and the kite after their kinds, every raven after its kind, the ostrich, the short-eared owl, the seagull, and the hawk after their kinds, the little owl, the screech owl, the white owl, the jackdaw, the carrion vulture, the fisher owl, the stork, the heron after its kind, and the hoopoe and the bat. And every creeping thing that flies is unclean for you. They shall not be eaten. You may eat all clean birds.
So something that was added here was verse 11 and verse 20. All clean birds you may eat, or you may eat all clean birds. And so it's you can assume that the ones that aren't referenced directly are going to fall more into the category of clean birds, which generally represent the poultry. But we also know that the turtle dove and the pigeon are two things also that are considered clean. Verse 19 said, also every creeping thing that flies is unclean for you, they shall not be eaten. So if we just read verse 19, then we would say, well, you can't eat any bugs at all. But you have to read Deuteronomy 14 and Leviticus 11. However, of the birds that we can't eat, which I'm really disappointed I can't eat bat. I mean, that's something that I've been really had my hankering for. No, not really. There was a study done about some people that lived in South America, and they were their whole colony was sick, just constantly sick, and people were dying, and doctors went down there, couldn't figure out what was wrong with them. They knew they were dealing with toxins of some sort, and they couldn't figure out what it was, and they finally asked them. They followed them to see what it was they were eating because they couldn't communicate, and they would go out and they would get fruit bats, and they would kill fruit bats and eat them. Even though they were fruit bats, the toxins were still killing their people, so he had to change their diet. I don't know if you looked in this passage for that or what. All right, so let's go back to Leviticus 11. Oh yeah, and that, by the way, that's a owl. Who knows what it's doing? Throwing up? What's it throwing up? They call it a pellet. Yeah, it's a pellet, and it's basically they eat all this vermin, and then their stomachs dissolve it all, but the stuff they can't dissolve, like the fur and the bones, they squeeze it into a nice little trash compactor pellet, and then they barf it up once in a while. Yeah, I'm so glad I'm not an owl. I haven't thrown up since I was probably in my early 20s. I don't know, because it's like I feel it coming. I'll just tighten up. I can't stand throwing up, so I'll be sick for a week before I throw up. My wife, she said, just get it over with. Are you kidding me? Okay, so when it comes to the owls, they would be considered forbidden fruit. All right, hallelujah. Let's get back to Leviticus 11, because again, we're going to the first 5 books of Moses. We're looking there for instructions on righteous living.
All the flying insects that creep on all fours shall be an abomination to you. Yet these you may eat of every flying insect that creeps on all fours, those which have jointed legs above their feet with which to leap on the earth. These you may eat, the locust after its kind, the destroying locust after its kind, the cricket after its kind, and the grasshopper after its kind. But all other flying insects which have 4 feet shall be an abomination to you.
Okay, so earlier it said you couldn't eat any, or later I should say, in Deuteronomy. Can't eat any, but Leviticus says, well, wait, there's certain kinds that you can eat, and they're being very specific. It has to have a jointed leg for hopping, and it has to be able to fly. That's the requirements for you to be able to consume them. Oh, still sounds gross to me. But if you're in a pinch, there you go. Okay. And let's finish. Let's continue reading.
These shall also be unclean to you among the creeping things that creep on the earth: the mole, the mouse, the large lizard after his kind, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the sand reptile, the sand lizard, and the chameleon.
Yeah, what does it mean when it says after its kind? That the whole species. So if there's been more developed since then, yes, then there are also going to be. So he was thinking ahead, which is awesome. And again, there goes the mouse. I was counting on that too. All right. So somebody else. Can you imagine a mouse in a hot dog bun? Just. All right. I got rid of a mouse. I didn't tell you. I got rid of one this morning in our downstairs. Mouse at our house. Yeah, gone, dead. I thought about the study. I thought, oh no. Okay. 39 through 40, we're almost done. We got a few more slides in Leviticus, and I will be skipping ahead in some of these slides. There's more if you wanted to read more. So who's my next reader?
And if any animal which you may eat dies, he who touches its carcass shall be unclean until evening. He who eats of its carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. He who carries its carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening.
Okay, now I want to point out something here. There's a lot more information that's going to be delineated that I'm going to skip over that talks about what to do if a lizard falls in your water, lands on your pot, accidentally jumps on your plate, things like that. I'm going to skip that for now, but I do want to point out carcass. And I looked up the word for carcass. It's not a leather jacket. Okay, that's not considered biblically. This is my understanding. This is what I understand today at this moment. It was not considered a leather jacket. It would be considered an animal just died, and now it's a dead carcass. So the Hebrew word there for carcass means a dead animal. So not the products made from a dead animal. And I say that because of this. Who's that? John. What's he wearing? Camel's hair, skins of camels. He couldn't have that on if it was unclean. If this law meant that he can't touch a dead carcass, and if that would be considered a dead carcass, then he would not have been clean. And most likely when he immersed Yeshua, he would have been unworthy to have immersed him. Yeshua would have pointed it out. As well as, we're still trying to figure out what the temple was made of, or the tabernacle, and the coverings of the tabernacle. They think it was porpoise skins, possibly, or beaver skins, or things like that. These things you can't eat. They're considered unclean. Yet they're not their dead carcass, but their products, their skins, were allowed to be used to cover the most holy place. So I'm just saying, I'm still learning things here. So that means I could still play football if I wanted to, but possibly, if we take that for what it's worth. It's very possible, and it's possible that I haven't looked into halakha for the Jews in that regards. But I'm not, and of course they don't look at John the Baptist as somebody to look up to. So yeah, good point. And we'll find out that when it comes to kosher and koshering things, we have what the scripture says, and then we have the fences built around it for kosher. And I understand the reason why. So this might, right here, this blue might represent what the Bible says, but that black line is then what Judah has erected to keep you from ever getting into something that's unclean. But then they tell you you're unclean if you cross that line. So you have to figure that out for yourself. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But for me and my house, we've decided this is enough, and we'll be cautious in that. We have our own cautions that we put forth. I'm actually not that great at this. My wife, she's the grocery getter and whatnot. So she tells me to eat it, I eat it. If she tells me not to eat it, I still eat it usually. But no, I don't eat it, no. Okay, 41.
And every creeping thing that creeps on the earth shall be an abomination. It shall not be eaten. Whatever crawls on its belly, whatever goes on all fours, or whatever has many feet among all creeping things that creep on the earth, these you shall not eat, for they are abomination. You shall not make yourselves abominable with any creeping thing that creeps, nor shall you make yourselves unclean with them, lest you be defiled by them.
Okay, so the passage that says, or not passage, the saying that says that you are what you eat applies here, because they're saying if you eat the unclean thing, you're unclean. If you eat the abominable thing, you're abominable. That's what it just said. Now, to be fair, up above, it talked about if in 39 and 40, it does talk about if you did touch a dead carcass, then, because sometimes they had to get it out of the city. Well, you're unclean until evening, and you had to wash your clothes, bathe, and probably take a mikvah. But there was you're not cast out of the kingdom forever. Not talking about eating them, talking about touching. Okay, so that brings us then to this. This is basically a summary. On the earth, the things that are unclean, we have three categories. The beasts that do not both chew the cud and have cloven hooves, like the swine, the hare, the camel, mouse, frog, mole, lizard, tortoise, and snail. Then the things in the water, they don't have fish and scales, like shellfish, lobsters, crayfish, crabs, shrimp, and seafood. Oysters, I consider another delicacy. I never got into oysters. Hallelujah. And then the last one, then the things in the air. So we have things on the land, things on the water, things in the air. And the Father has given us some of those. Let's just keep that in mind, because how many of those things did Adam and Eve eat? It wasn't on their menu. They ate in the garden. Animals weren't given to them from what we can read. They were given to Noah first to partake in. So we get quite a bit more offerings. I would dare say that the salad in the Garden of Eden might have been some pretty good salad. Might have been some real good salad. This may be quite a step down from that. So these are things we're supposed to watch out for. And if we would summarize it and try to look for some meaning in it, we might come up with this. We have the sun that's is providing the energy to planet Earth, and it lands in the grass, and the first eaters of the grass, of that energy, are considered herbivores. They have multiple stomachs so that they can process that grass into flesh and into milk and things like that. The things then that eat them are called predators. They don't eat the grass. They don't have the ability to eat the grass. They eat the animals that eat the grass. So they're the second order, if you will. And then you have the third category, which would be scavengers. And so you have, like, here, a dead rat. And how many of you seen a possum at night out there cleaning off the road? Yep, try not to hit the possum, right? If you do hit the possum, there'll be another possum out to eat the possum. I've seen that. It's like, oh, are you kidding me? Vultures, things like that. So, this is considered food for you and I. This is considered food for you and I. That's the purpose of it. That has a purpose too. Predators have a purpose, and their purpose is to keep the gazelles in check, number one, but also to keep a healthy herd, to keep a healthy population. The sick ones will get eaten. Can you imagine if the first time you ever got sick, you got eaten? You wouldn't live very long, would you? Yes, sir. He says that, I didn't know that. The vultures are so toxic that they won't even eat themselves or their own kind after they've died. I've heard that even the ones around here, the turkey vultures, that if you get anywhere near them, that you can smell them. I haven't gotten that close, but it's like a trainer. They're training and teaching their herd how to run faster, to be strong, because that way, I mean, think about COVID. Somebody got COVID and then they put a mask on. No, you got COVID, you eat them. You come over here and eat that person, and they're not going to give it to anybody else. See, it was a way of keeping the herd healthy. And then you have, and see, he's catching a sick one right there. And then you have the trash. So the scavengers are the trash collectors. That's their purpose. They were created for a purpose. But they don't cross. That's not food. That's not food for us. And this is not trash. This is not junk. Stuff to think about. Now, granted, that food is a little, I did wear my hosting socks today, in case you wondered. I really got into it. Okay, now I need a volunteer. I need one volunteer, please, if you will. Come on up here. Do I have one? All right, come on up here. Put you right up here front and center. Are you hungry? Did you have a snack? Did you have a snack earlier? No, so we got a prime. Well, we might get to see it again. Oh, come right up on over here on this side, right there. I got a snack for you. To consider. I have a snack for you to consider. So face the audience here, okay? So here's your plate. Here's your fork. So delicacies. This is worth, I guess, a wedding celebration. Oh, so we gotta get out the best stuff. We gotta get out the best stuff for you. All right. So we're going to get right in here and get into this bad boy. This thing is what? This is a scavenger that cleans off the bottom. It cleans off the bottom of the rivers and stuff. It's like, okay, this is good stuff. So we get that right there. See if we can get this figured out. Oh yeah. There's some good food. Oh man. You're snubbing your nose at it. But just a minute here. We're not done. We can put some ketchup on there, right? So now, quick. Now come on over here. You got to look at this. That will make it better, won't it? We'll just put a little bit of special sauce on it. That doesn't look very good, does it? No. But isn't that what we've been doing when we eat things that eat this kind of stuff? So thank you. Give me a hand. Give me a hand. Yeah, we'll put that someplace special. Okay. Oh, there's a possum back here eating it right now. Then they become the dead carcass. Yes, they do. An herbivore can become they don't eat the trash, but they can become the trash. Yes, predators. Okay, so we were talking about kosher. These are some of the symbols that you might be familiar with, and it's worth saying. I know that people have different ideas, and I'll just tell you, people don't like you talking to them about their finances. They don't like you talking to them about their health, and they don't like talking to you about what they should or shouldn't eat. So I'm not telling you what to do, but these, and I'm not going to say that these are all guaranteed to be good, but they try real hard. They try real hard to make sure, to give you some peace of mind that this item has been inspected and is a clean animal, number one. Number two, has been slaughtered correctly, things like that. They have rabbis that do the inspection and stuff. But they also take it a step further. This one here says kosher dairy. There's one here that says kosher dairy right there. And so, again, talk about the fence that they put in. They have a real big fence for not eating meat and dairy together based on the scripture that was in this passage in Deuteronomy anyway. Deuteronomy 14, it was listed as one of the, listed ahead of these rules, and it talked about do not boil a kid in its mother's milk. So they say, well, how can you be sure that this milk right here wasn't the mother of, or wasn't the mother of this meat that you're eating? So they have a lot more rules regarding that. We don't separate meat and milk ourselves because we believe a little bit differently, but if you do, that's fine by me. We don't necessarily practice it here. Well, we don't practice it here at all, at least not in teaching, but you're welcome to if you want to. I'd encourage you to inspect it for yourself. So then we are into what you talked about. This is gelatin, and this is gelatin, little gummy bears. Oh, they look so good, look so innocent. Look, you got some marshmallows roasting here. That's gelatin after the processing. This is gelatin before. Yeah. And it's pig's feet. Most gelatins are derived from pig's feet, horse hooves, and cattle feet. But they also get it from bones. If you've ever had a chicken, you got a rotisserie chicken, and you've taken it out after it's cooled off, and there's that jelly stuff in the bottom, that's gelatin. That's come from the flesh in general, from the skin, various things. I studied the process on actually taking this from there to there, and it's disgusting. I won't tell you anything about it. I do want you to be able to participate in the meal today, so we'll leave it at that. But there are healthy alternatives, and Melanie can tell you, and I'm sure any of these ladies, I'd encourage you ladies to talk, especially at the women's retreat. Figure out some things because us guys really want something wobbly and sweet to eat. So figure something out, please.